Hello there. I'm JP.
Hello there. I'm WH Park.
How are you? We're back. We
back.
are. We are. We're back indeed. It's been a while since we finished Andor, which was, let's just face it, absolutely amazing. And we're now back, and we've got the Mandalorian season 3.
That's right.
So, but I have to ask you in the meantime, how have you been? You've been all right?
I've been good. Yeah, I went to some. I went to a live wrestling show in Toronto for the first time in many years.
Oh wow!
It was Lucha Demand Lucha, which is funny because like most of the people on the show weren't luchadors. There's some, but most of them were like indie wrestlers, and like a lot of GCW wrestlers, which is hilarious for me, including Benno's favorite Jimmy Lloyd was on the show.
Oh my god!
Hilarious. So, but it's funny, like people chanting lucha, and I'm like, there's no luchas. There's no lucha happening in this ring. It's all like, hardcore.
Was Gringo Loco on there? Sounds like the kind of thing he'd be doing.
Oh no, he's like he's like their champion, and he comes to Toronto like every month. Like he's fighting Commander, the guy I see all, like clips of all the time, like doing crazy shit. So I'm gonna try to go to the next show and watch Commander fight Gringo Loco in what should be like a match bereft of like any psychology, but who cares?
No, that sounds.
I don't go to indie wrestling for for psychology and storytelling.
That sounds incredible because I tell you what, like if they had that way, there's a nice easy link from Gringo Loco to Grogu Loco, isn't there as well? That'd be so if somebody wanted to do lucha but with a baby Yoda mask on, then that would be,
you should come, JP. You'd have fun because like Braden Davey go to these
sold
all
on
the
it.
time, and like you would enjoy like hanging out with actually it was it's like I think 300 people.
That's what you want.
It was packed. It was a Thursday night and it was packed. Like I was really impressed with with it. There's not I would say who was there? Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart was there signing autographs and like selling pictures and shit. And I was like 2 feet away from him.
I would have loved to have seen you get a photo with Jimmy Hart.
Wow. I wasn't gonna pay for that. I'm like Maddie. I don't pay for that shit. I was just like, holy shit, that's Jimmy Hart, like a legend, in the business of wrestling. And he's like 2 feet away from me in essentially like I don't know, like what amounts to being basically a high school gym in the heart of downtown Toronto. So it was kind of funny. But like you'd enjoy hanging out with Braden and Davey as well. Like they were there and it was really nice. And what was I going to say? My highlight, though, was this local act called Los Medicos. So they were all dressed in scrubs and had latex gloves on and white lucha masks. And their leader, I forget what his name is, but his mask was like he was wearing scrubs and like one of those white lab coats. But his mask like showed the inside of his brain. Like there was, and it was like so. I think
that's quite cool.
Yeah, his gimmick was like maybe he's like a neurosurgeon or something like that. I don't know.
Fair enough. That's very specific. He'll sell a few of those.
Yeah, I think they were selling those. Like it was funny because like they're actually quite entertaining. But the one dude, the biggest guy, and by big I mean he was kind of fat. Like he was like blown up 3 minutes into this match, and it was just for me. I was just like dying of laughter, like watching him, like trying to keep up with everyone else in the match. And there was a guy there. I swear to God, there's like a guy on the other end of on the other side of the match. Like it was a trios match, and I was with my friend Joey Bay.
Oh yeah.
And I said to him, "Is this guy doing an homage to Chris Benoit? Like, because he looked like Benoit during his Wild Pegasus days, like the hair, the fucking gear." I was like, oh shit. And he wrestled like him. He wrestled like Chris Benoit. I was like, oh shit, this guy must be like wants to be the new Chris Benoit. Hopefully just in ring.
I was going to say.
Stuff. Yeah, not the other stuff. Hopefully.
That's it. Otherwise, yeah, my God. There's taking inspiration from him in ring as well. You think, well, there's a few things I should avoid, like the headbutts and the rest of it as well. And you could say,
I think he did a flying headbutt.
I think he kind of probably would do, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Oh God, I haven't done any of that. I haven't been to any wrestling shows in ages. need to get myself sorted out. I think the next thing I'm going to is Matty's, like when he's back from his wedding and his celebration. So that's the only thing that I.
Show? Is that it
isn't, but it is clashing with day one of WrestleMania that evening. Right. So there's the hope that somewhere he'll be like, oh, we'll get it on the telly here. And I just thought it'd be the one place where he could get away with it, particularly if it's Roman Cody. I can't. He'd struggle.
I think that's night 2.
I think it is night 2.
I think Sammy he'll give it a miss versus the Usos for the tag titles would be night 1, the main event actually.
Oh, yeah, I think it should be for that one, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't know what else would be big enough. I don't think of any of the.
There isn't anything else that's big enough.
I think they've like devalued their women's division to a point where it's like none of that can main event WrestleMania. So
no, none of it. They even made Ronda Rousey mean nothing on here.
Well, I think she made herself mean nothing.
And that's not the only female MMA fighter that we'll be referencing at some point during this show as well.
Who's made herself irrelevant? Yes.
Well, has now definitely within the canon of the show. They've managed to work out a way around that. But instead, we're talking about a heavy-duty main eventer this week, though, in The Mandalorian, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
I was thinking of this before. I'm doing it all the time, making wrestling to kind of real-life comparisons. And Pedro Pascal is someone who has worked his way through the mid card to that. So I think his work in Narcos kind of put him at that. Oh, he's got potential to be a main eventer. Now he's a proper main eventer because, he doesn't need just one show that's kind of dominating the conversation and is big globally. No, he's got 2 on at the same time. He's got the top 2 because we have the return of the Mandalorian series 3. And
I noticed him on Game of Thrones, obviously.
Oh yeah.
Like as what's his name? Martell. The Red Viper.
Yes.
Anyway.
It's his death scene that everyone really remembers.
He's great. Like the first time he appears on that show, like he just steals and like think of like the actors he's in, Peter Dinklage and Lena Headey and like Charles Dance. He's like in there with them and he's just stealing every scene he's in with them. And like the death scene is great,
Yeah.
But like I think that's where people really like, okay, we have to keep an eye on this dude. Mm-hmm. And then he got Narcos and then he got the Mandalorian. I would think Narcos was like what got him on the radar for like Jon Favreau to be the Mandalorian. So
yeah. And he hasn't done in terms of he seems to pick and choose his projects quite well, but he'll also do a lot of family films or stuff that's relatively like he was in the Kingsman sequel and was in a Robert Rodriguez kids film, which is still, I'm showing my age here when I'm thinking that's a sentence that shouldn't go, but there is an entire generation.
Really? He was in a Spy Kids movie?
Not a Spy Kids film, but it's about superheroes, but kind of like Spy Kids. Right. It's on Netflix. And he's in it. And also Hal Holbrook, his Narcos co-star for the first 2 series, is in it as well. So, yeah, he's gone down that road of doing the kids' films as well. And you think, okay.
Boyd Holbrook. Why not? He's good in The Sandman. He's good in The Sandman. Did you watch Sandman on Netflix? He's the Corinthian in that.
Yeah, he's fun. He's great. He's very good in that. I'll tell you where he isn't good.
And he's Predator, like the Shane Black one. You would think like the guy. Anyways, that's its point. But Boyd Holbrook is great in Logan because he's the main. He's Donald Pierce. He's the main antagonist in Logan. So he's quite a good actor. I feel too. Yeah. Imagine if they get Boyd Holbrook to play a villain in The Mandalorian. How good would that be?
I think it would be. I think between them because I want to say he's the villain in the kids' film. I don't know on this. Please respond back if you have seen this. I can't even remember the name and haven't even bothered to look it up. But it would be good if they got him back in. I mean, I think he naturally lends himself to playing a villain, as we saw with his work in the Corinthian as well. But yeah, it's very much Pedro Pascal's world, and we're just all living in it at this point in time. I think that's why you just see him with a smile permanently attached to his face, because you like to think he just thinks this won't last forever, but just enjoy it while he can.
He's making so much money. You have to imagine.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, his per episode rate is going to be he's in that main pantheon of actors now, and it's kind of got a level of global stardom that, you know, God, easy. But yeah, anyway, well, we're going to go on to the first episode of this. I tell you what, I mean, it's a shorter episode, this one. I think it just clocks in at just over 30 minutes on here as well. I was going to say, first of all, overall thoughts.
I thought it was a great setup for the rest of the season, because you basically laid the groundwork of what his quests are going to be throughout this season, because we look at Din Djarin as being kind of like a knight, you know, on a quest, because that's what it feels like. Like, you know, you can make the illusions with all the armor and stuff that he's like the Mandalorians as a race are kind of like medieval knights, whereas the Jedi are more like, you know, samurai.
Yeah,
the Mandalorians are more like, you know, like medieval knights. That he's
on this much quest. More on honor as well, don't they? Which you can fits in well with that.
Yeah, Jedi, you do really like, you know, fit into that samurai mold with like you know, like they follow more of a Bushido code that the samurai did, and like where knights believe in like fealty and loyalty and honor and things like that. That's why, you know, like it's really interesting when like Boba Fett shows up. He makes a point. I'm not a Mandalorian. I never said I'm Mandalorian. This armor belonged to my father, who was a Mandalorian, but I'm not one. And no Mandalorian, no true Mandalorian actually likes Boba Fett, except for Din Djarin, you know, because like they helped each other out. But you set up like the idea that he's going on a side quest to restore IG-11 in this episode. And to me, that brings out the hope that he's going to run into IG-88, you know, the more famous, well, is he more famous now, but like, you know, the original like IG droid from The Empire Strikes Back that IG-11 is part of the series of. So like maybe we're going to see, because they do like to throw in these like cameos from like the original trilogy and stuff like that. So maybe we're going to see that in this series. Who knows? The pirates, who are really cool. Like, can I just say, because like, you know, it's all over the trailers, like for the season, like there's obviously going to be this massive battle between the Mandalorians and the pirates on Navarro. Because like, if you watch the trailers, it's like, oh, that's all that's going to happen. And at first, when you watch the trailers, you don't know what's going on. But then you watch this episode, it's like, oh, I remember that ship. I remember these guys. Okay, and this is Navarro. This is really cool. This is what's being set up. But also like the conflict between Din Djarin and Bo-Katan, Din Djarin and the Armorer, I think is gonna come to a head. I think he's gonna be in conflict with both of them, you know, because he's gonna take over, because he has the Darksaber. I think he's gonna take over like existing Mandalorians and like unite them. Like I think he's gonna take the two factions of like the mainstream Mandalorians who don't feel like they have to follow the creed, and then the Mandalorians who do follow the creed. He's gonna unite them and create like maybe a new way that's opposed to both Bo-Katan and maybe to the Armorer, who's like very strict. He has a very strict adherence to the creed.
And, you know, yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, I think just from a kind of structural perspective, like this wasn't an episode that I was expecting to kind of be a lot of bells and whistles. I mean, we just came off reviewing Andor, which started off the first 3 episodes as very much a kind of setup. And then it would kind of build up to what would be like the kind of mid-season climax. And then it would build up again to what would be the end of season climax. And I think to a certain degree, we're going to get that with this series of Mandalorian. So I looked at this as kind of like it was a start, like as much as anything. There's some things I've got little kind of quibbles with as much as anything else. But I think in terms of like you're looking for what you want from a show like Mandalorian, it's delivering what it is. It's setting up the season very well. There'll be some twists and turns along the way. And you mentioned the Armorer there, because that's how we start off. What I originally thought was going to be a flashback there at one stage, and it's very canny in this regard. So we have the sound of hammering, because we have Beskar armor and a Beskar helmet being made. That's in a lovely kind of turquoise. I don't know what your thoughts were on the color coordination here. And it's being carried onto the beach, and there is a young lads probably, sort of 11, 12, something along those lines. And he's obviously, he says, the words of the creed shall ever be forged in my heart. But never gets to complete the vow because during this Mandalorian ceremony, it's interrupted, as all things are, by a gigantic space alligator. And I don't think there's any other way you can really describe it as that.
It's great. It's like I love, like we were talking off air. I love when Star Wars pays tribute to, like, films of the past and film genres of the past. It's like those horror movies from like the 70s where it's like, Roger Corman, like, oh, it's a giant alligator coming out of the sewers of New York City. This is very much like that. I thought it was
and
great.
Corman would have filmed it as just a lizard with some sort of bit of plastic on its back or something like that, wouldn't he?
For sure. When we talk about the color of the helmet, I think it's very clear that this kid is part of House Vizsla. That probably the heavy infantry Mandalorian, Paz Vizsla, voiced by Jon Favreau, is. I think it's very much like suggested that this guy is his father, like, because every time, like, he's about to get the helmet, you cut to Paz Vizsla looking over, like, with pride, and then he goes out of his way to save him from being eaten by the giant crocodile, alligator, whatever the fuck it is. And in this, it's like, I think it's okay. This kid's part of House Vizsla. He's probably Paz Vizsla's son, so maybe we'll see him again. But yeah, like, what's interesting is because when we last saw the covert, it was just the armor and Paz Vizsla. But now there's like a whole bunch of them again, like this, maybe a similar number to what they had when we in season 1 of the Mandalorian, like on Navarro. But now there's, like, I'd say at least 20 Mandalorians gathered on this whatever planet they're on.
Yeah, it felt even kind of more than that, didn't it? Yeah, quite a good few. I mean, they're having a battle, and I think, like you say, it does kind of hold credence. Especially the way that he kind of barges the young lad out of the way when he's in danger there at the end, as he steps in with a gun from Predator, which I'd love to think was something of a homage to Carl Weathers, hopefully. Good old Jesse Ventura.
And Jerry Ventura, that's right.
Exactly. But yes, this has about up until Din Djarin, Mandalorian, turns up. Launches like a big kind of
a proton torpedo. He used a proton torpedo to like what Luke used to
from his Naboo starfighter.
The Naboo starfighter, the original ones do have ports for 10 proton torpedoes. So you imagine this carries over. So he's got a nice complement of them, you would think. So he used one to destroy the space alligator that was going to eat the people that he wants to rejoin.
Yes, exactly. And he wouldn't have anyone to rejoin if it comes in and does that. And you would think, as a result of doing this, because it did look like they were severely struggling to kind of combat or make any waves into destroying the alligator. No, she is still not happy about the fact that he willingly removed his helmet on there, saying that redemption is impossible. They have that kind of serious conversation indoors, which Grogu is there as well, looking kind of wonderfully cute as ever. And there is a great moment, actually, I should say, when you realise it's him and lands the starfighter and he looks across, and then we see Grogu stick his head up, looking over.
There are a lot
incredibly
of great,
cute, and I'm a cynical bastard, and I don't know why. Like I do look at him and go, "Oh, bless."
There are a lot of great Grogu moments in this episode, I have to say. Yeah. We'll get to them, I'm sure. But I'm a huge fan of BB-8 in the sequel trilogy, just because BB-8 is so cute. And I love BB-8. BB-8 might be my second favorite character in the sequel trilogy, so because he's just so wonderfully precocious. But that's the same with Grogu. Grogu is wonderfully precocious, so. Not
great in Battlefront 2, though, BB-8. Is what I would say when
that's not canon, JP. That's not.
It really isn't canon. No, the configuration of just all the various people going, why were they fighting together? But I don't know. There we are. But instead, what we do get the setup is for one of the big quests is that as the mines of Mandalore destroyed by the Empire, but the crystal that he got from the Jawas has got Mandalorian written on there, and has said that this is proof that Mandalore's no longer poisoned. And if he can prove it, that he takes is it a bath in the
he has to bathe in the quote unquote living waters.
Living waters. That's
of Mandalore, of the mines of Mandalore. So we'll find out what that means. I think there's like some hidden meaning in there. But apparently
when he takes his helmet off. This is when we'll get to see Pedro Pascal for that one.
The script, there's like someone translated the Aubresh. I think it's written in Aubresh, which is like the alphabet of Star Wars. And it says something like it's a quote from Exodus or something like that from the Bible in reference to like one of the plagues visiting Egypt from God when Moses says like release my people. So which I bring up because I was watching a couple of videos about Easter eggs and things like that, and like there's this whole idea that I feel like the Mandalorians are meant to be like the Jewish people of Star Wars, like they've been exiled. They're like, from their home world. They don't have a home world anymore. They're kind of looking for a new home world. You know what I mean? Like Jewish people have done until like the creation of the, state of Israel in modern times. I feel there's kind of allusions to that. Like, they're
strict
so
orthodoxy versus a kind of more liberal version of Judaism.
Yeah, like I have friends who's like super orthodox, and he's like and then I have a friend who is Jewish, and he'll say, "I'm not a Jew, I'm ish." Like, but his parents are Jewish, right? But he's not Jewish. He didn't marry. His wife's not Jewish, so their kids aren't Jewish. So but this other guy, he's like Orthodox. He wears a yarmulke. He's grown out the beard. He teaches Judaism to like how to be a good Jew to like kids in schools and stuff like that. So it's funny like talking to these guys at the same time, because they were part of the same circle, and it's really interesting. So it's like, okay, so this Orthodox guy Yosef, he's like fucking the armorer, right? And like the Jared, he's like fucking the armorer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so no, he's Bo-Katan. Sorry, he's Bo-Katan because he's not Orthodox at all, but he's like of Jewish descent. Whereas like you would think, okay, so the mainstream Mandalorians, they're kind of like Jewish, like, but they're not Orthodox Jews. But like the Children of the Watch, they're super Orthodox Jews, and like they adhere strictly to their religion.
That's a cracking analogy, that one, though. I think it's gonna, and I think with this one, is you can see it coming into effect if it follows the path of what you said earlier on in the series. You could definitely see a kind of resolution to that analogy. What we go to next is we have Din Djarin and Grogu heading to Navarro. He's having a sleep while he's in hyperspace, which it does answer the question: what would you do in hyperspace? You'd have a sleep, wouldn't you? It's it can't be good for the back.
Well, if you have a freighter or like a gunship, you could probably play, holo chess, like Chewbacca and Han Solo do.
Yeah.
And when they're in hyperspace, but what would you do? Like, because you would think, because it's not hyperspace, is not instantaneous. It's like it takes quite a while. Like you can spend like hours in hyperspace, right? So why not just take a sleep? Like I would do that. I would just like.
Absolutely. Well, or you could do what Grogu does, which is stare at the purgill, which are outside, floating alongside, which is
I popped and I saw the silhouette. I was like, wait, is that a purgill? So people don't know what a purgill is. Have you seen? So you have not seen Rebels yet, have you, JP?
No.
Okay. So purgills appear in Rebels. Like they're a very important part of the end of Rebels. And I know you wrote it in your notes what happens with them, but I don't want to spoil it for people. But like I just give you the basic idea of purgills. Purgills are like basically space whales that have the natural ability to travel through hyperspace. They can travel at light speed but naturally. They don't need engines or any artificial mechanisms to do this. They have the natural ability to travel through hyperspace. So to see them, so it would be natural, like, oh, in hyperspace, you might see the silhouette of a purgill. But it's interesting that only Grogu sees this, not Din Djarin, because he's sleeping. He's sleeping, but like, oh, like, but maybe, there's like a thing where maybe Grogu will have an encounter. But I also think this is foreshadowing the connection that this show will have to the upcoming Ahsoka TV show, which I think will really tie into like Rebels, because it's going to be helmed by Dave Filoni, who created Rebels, and he's the creator of Ahsoka, and it's going to feature Sabine Wren, which is a Mandalorian character from Rebels. She's going to be live action co-star of this show, Ahsoka, coming up. I have to imagine she has to appear in this show as well, because she is also, like I said, a Mandalorian. And it would be cool to see another prominent Mandalorian show up on the Mandalorian, and see where she was, because she would be on the kind of like the Bo-Katan side of things, because they know each other through the TV show Rebels, and she used to be a wielder of the Darksaber. So, like it's my hope, and obviously this leads into probably the big quest of what it's going to happen to Ahsoka with Grand Admiral Thrawn, and possibly the main character of Rebels, which is Ezra Bridger. So we shall see. Like I'm thinking this have some tie-ins to that, and that we're going to see them appear in this show, which is like, cross my fingers that happens.
Yeah, very cool. Well, where they're traveling to in all of this is Navarro, which was, very much in the notes here, scummy fringe planet, but has gone very much up in the world through High Magistrate, and he's very clear to make sure this case. Grief Karga, played by Carl Weathers, which I'll always have a smile on my face at any appearance of Carl Weathers in anything. And he's gentrified it, to say that within an inch of its life. It's become the gem of the Outer Rim, or probably inner city Toronto. You can imagine looking kind of like this, very, very kind of jazzed up. They meet up. He's basically trying to get him to stay as Marshal, because guess what? Like, for those of you wondering, well, Gina Carano, and just remind me of her character's name there for a second, because has obviously, how do you get around to the character not being in this anymore? Well, you basically say that she was headhunted, wasn't she? So she can't be Marshal there at this point in time. Wants Din Djarin to be Marshal at this point, but he says he can't. He's even though he says, as we get the title of the show, that he's an apostate. Which did you know what that was?
Apostate. Yeah, because I saw the film Apostate, directed
one of
by
Jehovah's Witnesses.
No, it's directed by the guy who made The Raid. You ever see that one?
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah,
I love The Raid and Raid 2 and the first season of Gangs of London, actually.
Yeah, I got to watch the second season of that. Apparently, it's pretty good. It's pretty violent, even though he's not a part of it anymore. But Gareth
Evans. There's Gareth Evans and obviously Gareth Edwards.
And Gareth Hodgson as well.
Yeah.
There's that Gareth as well.
Triple G.
That's right. But Gareth Evans directed this film called The Apostate, starring the guy who is the lead of the X-Men Fox show, The Legion. So it's pretty interesting. I recommend it. So like, I know what an apostate means. Yes, it's someone who's been like exiled from the religion, excommunicated, so to speak.
I saw another film that it was called Apostate, but it was about someone it was a British kind of like independent film about them being thrown out of Jehovah's Witnesses and how they were struggling to cope. So yeah, very different, I imagine, from the one that you saw possibly.
It's very different from the Raid films. I will say this because it's an English language film, and it's just look it up. I'm sure it's on I think it's on Netflix or somewhere.
Okay,
you can find it somewhere. So
I'll definitely have to go around and see that. But there's trouble, and this is where probably Gareth Evans doing a set piece on this would have been something that would have been incredible. Instead, actually, we get a kind of very Western vibe because they face Vane, who is henchman of the Pirate King Gorian Shard, who we do see later on. And by God, you're not going to forget how he looks in a hurry. Kind of like when you think about it, it's kind of odd. It's been so gentrified that the former bar that they would go to is now a school. But they're not having any part of it. They want to go for a drink for old time's sake, him and a few pirates, reminding Karga that he paid them for sort of murder and mayhem in the same place. He wasn't having it. He was sort of revealing his blaster as well. And they have a shootout at this point in time. And Vane is told, under no circumstances are pirates welcome on Navarro anymore on there. So I thought a nice little sequence, and obviously then plays back to later on, introducing who are probably going to be like, the kind of B-level villains, if you want to think of it, as much of this series.
The name Vane is in reference to a famous English pirate, right? Charles Vane.
Oh, I didn't know that. I feel I should look this up. Charles Vane.
Yeah. So that's, I mean,
there was a few, mate. There was like
he's apparently like
operated in the Bahamas, smart cookie. Apart from
I love the design because he's dressed like a proper like fucking pirate, like from Pirates of the Caribbean like era,
Quite new romantic.
It's great. I thought it was a great design. And the actor who plays, what's his name? You have it in the notes.
I do indeed. In terms of the actor who plays Vane on there, if you just bear with me as well, Marty Matulis.
Yeah, he's actually quite known for doing a lot of costuming roles, like being monsters and the such in different films. It's like kind of like the guy who's like in all the like Guillermo del Toro movies. And he's like all the creatures in the Guillermo del Toro movies, but he's also he's like one of the main characters in like Star Trek Discovery, the speaking role. I forget his name.
Okay.
He's like the Silver Surfer in like the Fantastic Four movies from Fox, with Jessica Alba as Sue Storm. But it's like this guy is apparently like that. So this must be great that he got a speaking role on top of being like a creature. Like he's a Nikto. Which is one of the usually Niktos are like kind of like pirates in Star Wars. So it's cool. Like I just like that. What a menagerie of aliens though as part of his crew. There's a Trandoshan, there's like Clantunian, there's like all these different kind of creatures, and then we get the Pirate King. What's his name again? Pirate King. And I just like the fact that they just
Gorian Shard.
Gorian Shard. Like what a great name. And he's a pirate king. That's what they call him, the Pirate King.
Yeah. It's
like so Star Warsy, I feel. And that guy is played by a British actor, Nonso Anozie, who was like Zaro Jojan Daxos in the in Game of Thrones. And apparently he was like the co-star of Sweet Tooth on Netflix, which I've never seen, but I heard a lot of good things about it. But he's like this green swamp-like creature, very vegetative.
I was gonna say quite Sesame Street, dare I say at this point.
I love when puppetry comes into Star Wars. And it looks like it's kind of Muppets. I love original Yoda. I don't mind CGI Yoda, but I'm a big fan of puppet Yoda. I love that Grogu is sometimes a puppet, and I love that, we get the Anzellans, with the small little, droid smiths from Rise of Skywalker coming back, and they're all puppets. I think it's great. I just think it just adds, I think it's more realistic than CGI,
Oh, absolutely. Well, we're going to see him later on in a kind of short, in a short moment in there. I'm very, very when I saw on the casting list of the actor who plays him in Nonso Anozie, I was just thinking, oh my God, died in a in his own vault, didn't he?
That's right.
Just
locked
got
in there by
Daenerys.
Lady Kiara from Solo. Like you can make all these Game of Thrones, Star Wars connections, actually.
Wow. Yeah, there's always enough. As we saw with Andor, it was like really a game of that, of like
Pedro Pascal. Pedro Pascal's like one of the most famous ones, right?
Exactly. But then at this point, we see in Navarra, they've also raised a statue of IG-11, as you mentioned earlier on. And the statue is made of the droid's actual remaining parts. But Din Djarin says has to be that robot, has to be bringing him back. And then we get a Terminator sequence, because as they're trying to bring back the droid, it kind of goes back into its original setting of then trying to kill Grogu, who's looking kind of adorable on the table. And we're not quite sure if he's working some kind of magic necessarily on there. And the top half starts like kind of going along the floor, which is where you're getting the end of Terminator vibes from there with Linda Hamilton going into a kind of hydraulic press. We don't get that at this point. Instead, the way they defeat it is by pushing a bust of Carl Weathers, Grief Karga, I should say. It's not like Apollo Creed is pushed down in statue form or anything onto there, which then prevents it, and then leads to kind of quite a nice moment where they, in order to try and get it fixed, so they've got the best droid smiths there in Navarra at the moment, is two Anzellans who are voiced by Shirley Henderson, who might remember from the Harry Potter films, like kind of famously, was it Moaning Myrtle, who's like a ghost, was in Happy Valley in the UK, which I don't know if you've seen or if it's made its way. Absolutely well worth watching for like a kind of cracking British crime drama there as well. Very incredibly cute, smaller than Grogu, which you get yet another one, probably at this point about the third or fourth kind of very sort of cute baby Yoda moment of him trying to grab them while they are talking, because it's very, very kind of high pitched and they're working in this incredibly small quarters, which you're wondering how Din Djarin's managed to get in there in the first place. And they're saying that they need to get a
memory chip.
The memory chip, because the memory's all fried.
Yeah.
So yes, we have the Anzellans here as well, and I think it's kind of, you know, it's another side mission for this. So it's like, okay, in order to have IG-11 alongside, he's going to have to find this memory chip. Is this going to lead towards, like you mentioned earlier on, IG-88?
Well, I mean, there is a scene in the trailers where he goes, like Din Djarin goes to a bar that's only populated by droids. There's no sentient beings in there. It's only a droid bar. So there's this whole idea in Star Wars. It's called the droid, and we saw it's kind of aspects of it in Solo. It's called the droid grata. Like it's like this movement of droids that don't want to be like, you know, they don't want to be considered like slaves anymore, and they want to be treated with respect. They want to be emancipated. So maybe we're gonna see aspects, some like that idea come through in like the character, like the droid character played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge in Solo. She's totally about the droid grata and like droid freedom and droid emancipation. So maybe we're gonna see that come through in this side quest. And then to me it would make the most sense, because IG droids are not very common. They're very rare. So like, where would you get another memory chip for an IG series droid? Maybe from our original IG droid from the movies, IG-88. So we'll see. I'll pop big if that happens, because I like when things from the original trilogy do show up on this show. By the way, this whole Terminator sequence with IG-11 coming back to life and crawling, that's totally Terminator for sure. Like, it looks like a Ray Harryhausen kind of stop motion action that they use. It's really great. But have you ever seen the film, the 1980 sci-fi cult classic Saturn III, JP?
I have. Is this one with Klaus Kinski?
No, it's Kirk Douglas,
right?
Farrah Fawcett, and Harvey Keitel.
I have seen that. Yes, I have. Is that the one where they take pills for sex?
I can't remember if that, but there's that horrifying robot in it that falls in love with Farrah Fawcett.
That sounds like a very 1970s, early 1980s thing for anything to do, is that they would fall in love with Farrah Fawcett. That feels like, my God, and how old would Kirk Douglas have been at that point? He would have been quite old at that stage as well. I do remember it. I remember because I was absorbing, and it felt like the kind of thing that we would have seen in the video store. When video store, and it would have just immediately gone, I'd have to see that, in the same way that I had to see Space Hunter Adventures in the Forbidden Zone. It was like, yeah, they're the kind of things that our childhoods are kind of completely shaped upon, aren't they? But yeah, oh no, that's my God, Saturn 3, what a reference.
Yeah, it's directed by Stanley Donen, which is weird.
Who did Guys and Dolls?
Singing in the Rain.
Singing in the Rain. Sorry,
I think he did Singing in the Rain as well. Yeah, it's one of his last films, I think. So
wow,
it's interesting. Like,
how to go from Singing in the Rain to kind of Bad Lieutenant. Where's the through line in all of that? And you go, well, Harvey Keitel, Stanley Donen directed him in that. My God, I have to go. Well, that's the listener's homework, is to go and listen to or go and watch Saturn 3 on there. Where we go to next, though, is we go to Calavana. So we have, which is in the Mandalorian system.
Oh, you forgot the space battle.
Oh my God, I have completely forgotten the space battle. Jesus Christ, I've just skipped entirely onto that. Apologies for that. On there. Yeah, we do. He's getting ready to head off. And then at that point, he finds out he's being followed by a lot of the same pirates as before. However, there's a what's the name of it? A Bosk in there as well.
Trandoshan, yeah. There's a Trandoshan.
Yeah, Trandoshan. In there at that point, we have a kind of great sequence as they're going through an asteroid field, where he manages to kind of get the better of them, coming around a couple of times. And then as soon as they think they're out, up against a gigantic ship, where we do meet the aforementioned seaweed monster and Pirate King, Gorian Shard. What did you think of this as a sequence? I'm amazed that I've gone and forgotten about it as well. I thought it was I thought it was a lovely little sequence.
I love dogfighting, space dogfighting in Star Wars. Like, I think it's such a staple. I like that of what makes Star Wars great is like the space battles, like this battles between like different spaceships. It's not especially like fighters or a gunship, right? Like, so when we have the sequences involving like Boba Fett's, starship. I still call it Slave One. When Slave One's fighting the TIE fighters at the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian, that's cool. Like whenever the Millennium Falcon is having a battle with like a bunch of TIE fighters, I think that's awesome. Like, so this is something that they do really, really well, which are these dog fights. And I just like, again, it harkens back to like a film genre with like World War II, air battle movies that were a big influence on George Lucas, right? So like, I think it's one of my favorite sequences. I think my favorite sequence, like one of my favorite sequences in The Last Jedi, is like where Poe Dameron is just like goes against the giant Star Destroyer and just like starts taking out all the surface cannons, and then has the battle with the TIE fighters before he goes back. That's the opening of The Last Jedi. I think it's just such a great sequence. And so I like pilot characters of Star Wars. Like, I think if you're good at these things, like you're a good gunfighter or hand-to-hand combatant, that's great. But if you also happen to be a great pilot, I tend to automatically think, I like this character. So.
Well, it is. If you love that as well, I'll recommend it to you. There are some bits on Battlefront as well that are phenomenal in terms of kind of space dogfights. You'd be loving that, which are far too hectic in order to try and for me to keep up at my age. But my sons appear to be doing very well on that front. After he does, and he escapes as well he has the conversation with Gorian Shard, who has him locked in, but manages to use the hyperspace to kind of get away, doesn't he?
No, it's not hyperspace, because what it is just like it's like a
so did wonder this,
like a nitrous oxide kind of thing. It's like a boost, right?
Oh yeah.
because like they introduced it in like when we introduced the modified N1 Starfighter in I think it's episode 5 of the Book of Boba Fett, where he builds it with Pelimato, and she says, "You press this button, and you'll be faster than anything." And then he escapes the 2 X-wing fighters that pull him over for like speeding near, a space bus, and then he's like, "Okay, we'll see you guys later." Boom, and they said, "Oh, he jumped into hyperspace." It's like, no, that was his sublight, engines. They just faster than anything else out there right now. So it's cool. It's a cool little device. It's like, bam. It's like, just escapes. It's in its own way, it's kind of like cool, like how Andor escapes the interceptor, Star Destroyer cruiser type thing,
That's what I was going to say. That was a phenomenal sequence about how they kind of got around it as well. And like you say, it's kind of classic. Going back to talk about pirates and pirate film, the idea of being on a smaller boat, being completely outgunned and outnumbered by a gigantic kind of opposing boat on there as well. Fantastic stuff. But it is after that point that we end up on Calavana, which is a world in the Mandalorian system as well. And we get to see a Mandalorian castle on there. And as they land, it's not exactly like there's lots of people about. Instead, what we have is Bo-Katan Kryze sat on the throne with her leg up and the helmet off, in there, trying to look relaxed, not really fooling anyone, because as becomes apparent in their conversation, that it's on a throne, but because she doesn't have the dark saber there as well, all the forces she had have melted away to become mercenaries. And obviously, at this point as well, that she's probably not happy with the fact that he ended up with the dark saber himself, Din Djarin in there as well. Bo-Katan insists as well there's nothing magic about the mines of Mandalore, and that the quest is based on superstition in there as well. But is this going to lead to her coming on the trip there to the planet as maybe that it isn't as ravaged, plundered, and poisoned as everyone thinks?
Yeah, well, we'll find out. She's obviously going to show up again in this season. I think she's going to be one of the main characters of this season, along with, I think the armor is going to play a bigger role than she has in the last 2 seasons of Mandalorian. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I like Bo-Katan. Like, she's a character that crosses over from the Clone Wars, and what was great about that was that they got the voice actress Katie Sackhoff, who was in Battlestar Galactica, to be the live action version of Bo-Katan, which you don't always get. Like, it's not easy to get like the voice actor to be the live action version of a character from Clone Wars. Like, I look at like Ahsoka. Rosario Dawson did not play Ahsoka on the Clone Wars. It was what's her name again? I feel so bad. I'm terrible with names these days. Like, anyways, the voice actress who does Ahsoka does not look like Ahsoka in real life, so it would not match. Like, so you could probably do from Rebels. You could probably do Harrison Dula. You could probably get the actress who does the voice for her to be the live action version. They did not get the voice actress for Sabine Wren to be the live action version. They got a different actress for that. But I think if you needed to bring Kanan Jarrus into the live action, you could have got his voice actor, which was Freddie Prinze Jr. I think he looked enough like Kanan Jarrus that, like, if you ever did a live action version of Kanan Jarrus, you could bring Freddie Prinze Jr. into live action Star Wars as that character, which I'm sure he would love. He's such a big fan of Star Wars. So,
we were ecstatic. There's a couple of wrestling points on there due to, obviously, with Freddie Prinze Jr., who obviously is going to be launching his wrestling promotion any point now, or is he? As a story that never seems to ever go away as well. Didn't want to give a shout out because we mentioned this on our Andor recaps, in terms of Genevieve O'Reilly being on, in terms of voice acting, Mothma, and then obviously being cast in the Andor series, and how good that was as well. And we were talking about Last of Us, and I know the voice actors for both Joel and Ellie make kind of cameo appearances in the Last of Us series as well, because they're going to go for the stars necessarily on there. I did want to ask though, because I mean, given our obvious wrestling crossover tie-in, are we going to be seeing Mercedes Verano at soon enough as well? Because we've seen obviously Bo-Katan, I imagine, in the next episode.
She had a lot of time off, right? So she could have filmed scenes for this show. Like, I think so. Like, yes, I think we're gonna see the two. So Casca Reeves is her character, and then we said the other guy, the other Mandalorian from the episode where we introduced Bo-Katan in live action, Axe Woves, the actor who played him, they'll probably both be back and be part of like whatever happens with the Mandalorians by the end of the season. I think they'll both be there. I think it'd be cool. Like, let Mercedes have like another good aspect to her 2023. You know, besides being IWGP Women's Champion, right?
This should be a priority rather than being IWGP Women's Champion. If you're thinking bigger picture, longer term, a lot less bumps. Like, this is, you know, sticking with this, there is a Gina Carano shaped hole that she could happily kind of go into in terms of a rising popularity, as long as she learns not to start believing in mad conspiracy theories and such like. But,
and I mean,
she was a wrestler, so
you know, so like, I think if she's smart, like and they offer her like more opportunities to be this character, like she should take it, and like, you know, like she gets offers to do comic book conventions or, you know, science fiction conventions, like because of this, not because of being a wrestler. Like, she's smart, she'd be like, yeah, totally, and then like
completely
gets on that circuit of like making money as well, instead of like just wrestling. Like, I mean, like, she's gonna make a lot of money doing wrestling, obviously, still, before she retires. But this is a good thing to think about after she's done wrestling. Is like go into acting. Like, look at like Cena. John Cena is going to be a massive fucking star, I think, sooner rather than later. And like Bautista's foray into acting has to be the best decision he's ever made in his life.
Oh God, I've started watching. He appears in C, which is, I'm watching a lot of things on Apple TV at the moment, which is a lot better than what it actually sounds. And he's in a Jason Momoa series 2 as Jason Momoa's
everyone's like
brother.
Blind, right?
Everyone's blind. Yeah.
Something like that.
It's very odd. That's all I'll say about it. Is it's kind of odd in a good way, because everyone moves in a certain way and everyone has conversations in a certain way because they've really thought about. But there's stuff in it that's very weird.
I'm telling you, JP,
stuff works and some stuff doesn't.
People are gonna hold Dave Bautista as a wrestler turned actor in a higher regard than they ever will Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
Not in terms of box office, obviously, but like, I think that's fleeting. I think Dwayne's like, really, his box office appeal is really dwindling. I think Black Adam did him no favors. But Dave Bautista's always gonna get work, because people are gonna look at him like, I could use a guy who looks like that. I know he's willing to do stuff like maybe other, you know, guys like from his background are not willing to do, like Johnson, like in terms of acting or the kind of characters that they want to play. And he's willing to do small roles and do interesting roles, like, you know,
with interesting directors.
Yeah.
He's Denis Villeneuve loves him. Like, that's not a situation that if
Ryan
I would
Johnson,
have said
he's doing things with Ryan Johnson, Denis Villeneuve, and like, you know, who like, you know, like Dwayne's never gonna work with fucking Denis Villeneuve. You know, like he's probably gonna have to resort to going back to fucking the Fast and the Furious again at some point.
That Get Shorty sequel was as left field as Dwayne's getting, really, compared to Big.
Johnny Darko.
Made the prediction on Spotlight before that he will end up winning an Oscar at some point in time as well. That'd be someone to bring into this. My God, we haven't seen Big Dave with him.
I bet Big Dave is just waiting for a phone call of like,
oh, he is.
Do you want to be in Star Wars? Yes. Do you want to be a Wookiee? Sure.
Yeah. And he was happy to have his last match in wrestling. Go, yeah, I'll have my last match, but I've been done with this a long time ago anyway, and quite, and has done better than any of us has ever had any right to think.
I bet he's happier than anyone in wrestling right now.
Hey, and if you don't believe us on the acting front, the beginning of Blade Runner 2049.
He's great.
That is a tiny role, and you can see how good he is at emoting. But that brings us to the end of the first episode. We've we have our quests very much set up for what this third season is going to be about. We have introduction of some, kind of interesting newer characters. We've got some wonderful tie-ins as well. I mean, there's a couple of things I would think where the stuff with the IG-11 and the memory card bit is probably stuff where it feels probably a bit too convenient in terms of being able to write in. But as you said before, really solid opening episode.
Mm-hmm. I wonder what we're going for episode 2. Is he going straight to Mandalore, or is he going to do his side quest? Because at some point he also is going back to Tatooine, right? Because he's gonna get he's gonna meet Pelimato again in her hangar.
And it's an interesting one for that, because where can he go to? Well, he can go anywhere in a Naboo starfighter, but it is kind of set up. I heard somebody make the comparison saying it's kind of like a video game. He's got his quests; they're very easily set up. Some of them are very much side missions. Some of it's the main mission. And I think, how do I approach these things in games? Normally, I go, I'll do some side missions first. I'll just do side mission clear up. I'll just do a whole series of side missions and things like that. So I wonder whether or not next week is where we're gonna find him getting the memory chip, going back and getting IG-11 fixed.
Well, I don't know. Like, I assume he doesn't want to go back to Mandalore without IG-11, because he says that. But like, maybe he just goes say, "Fuck it, I'm going straight to Mandalore right now. I just explore it," or something like that. Who knows?
If it is a video game, he'd go there, die, find it. Actually, I need IG-11 in order to complete this. Go back and redo it.
Yeah,
in that classic video game.
It's interesting, like, because IG-11 is played by Taika Waititi, and like, I don't know what his availability is like to do, like, how many episodes he can do realistically, like with his, which I'm sure is a very busy schedule he has as a filmmaker alone. So
I was going to say is developing screenplays and everything else, but it is a voice acting role, which you would imagine at least there's the flexibility about when he can, how much he can
does the stop motion.
He
does the stop motion acting for it too.
Ah, yeah, of course.
So, like, I mean, they could always get a stand-in. He could just do the voice acting, dubbing over and stuff. But I would imagine he's like someone like, no, I want to play him too. I want to like do that. I don't know how practical. Where's he going to fit him in the Starfighter? The thing's not that big.
Yeah. Just like chained on at the sides as he's asleep in hyperspace, going past the purgills. Well, we'll find out next week, hopefully. Yeah. That brings us to the end of this first episode. Anything you'd like to plug before we wrap up?
No, like as you see here on the screen, I put my association with Post Wrestling. Just go to Post Wrestling. I do a lot of stuff over there. It's fun. We did a review of Ant-Man and Wasp Quantumania, which I gave it a 3, JP, out of 5.
That's where I am at.
Yeah. Like, I liked the Kang stuff. I hated the MODOK stuff. I fucking hate that fucking version of it. Terrible. And I just think it's also just visually too busy at the end. It's just very hard to follow. I say this about that film is like, I think the designs, the concept designs of like the aliens and stuff, I think was fantastic. And Kang is awesome, and I'm just excited to see where this goes. And like the tease for Loki season 2 was really nice to see, and I'm more excited about that. That's
where I came out. I was more excited about Loki season 2 than what I would be of anything of Ant-Man and the Wasp necessarily. It was fine, really, but I did what I would think of as the John Pollock double. I did that and Cocaine Bear within a week of each other as well, with Quantum Mania and Cocaine Bear.
How's Cocaine
Which I
Bear?
also thought it was okay. It was fine. It should have been more bonkers. That's all I would say. Is it should have been absolutely, completely nuts, and at times it isn't, and weirdly wraps itself up in with the message that family is all important. Which, when I go and see a film called Cocaine Bear, I don't want a morality tale about how family is going to be all important. I want to see bears on coke.
That's it's like the Fast and Furious. I don't want to hear about family. I just drive the cars fucking fast. That's all I
And
want.
if we end up in a Godzilla kind of style world of Cocaine Bear versus Meth Wolf as the sequel to it, then so be it.
By the way, I did make a mistake. The film I'm talking about is not called The Apostate; it's called The Apostle.
The Apostle.
The Apostle. So check it out. I think you'd like it. It does delve into very Gareth Evans violence at points in it.
Okay.
It's about religion, about a man with religion and things like that. But I think you'd like it. So
I'd like that. As someone who is very much a lapsed Catholic as well, anything along those vibes, you chucking in a bit of violence in there as well at the same time, I'll be all over that. But yeah, you'll be able to catch me obviously on Spotlight, which we're going to be doing at time of recording. Revolution on Tuesday, that we're going to be reviewing that.
I should also plug. I'm going to be on The Business with Maddie Edwards.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Which I'm really looking forward to next week for that one.
I'm gonna ask him about wrestling for points, why he doesn't like that.
There's so much stuff like that. There's bits where I was talking about Noah, and he'd just be very, very quiet in the background. But yeah, that was it. Next week we'll have this out, whether it's Sunday, Monday, one of the two. Hopefully fingers crossed, schedules permitting on there.
Right.
But
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to talking about Star Wars Weekly with you, JP.
Yes. Definitely. I'm looking forward to this series. We haven't had a chance to talk about Mandalorian together, like being really like kind of especially on the high of Andor as well, leading nicely into Ahsoka.
I want to just say, like, I'm looking forward to this because I loved Andor, as everyone who listens to this knows, but I love the Mandalorian as much for different reasons because they are very different aspects of Star Wars that fulfill a need in my fandom. Like Andor fulfilled a certain need in my fandom as like an intelligent, I hope intelligent adult. but Mandalorian fulfills a need for my Star Wars fandom as the 5-year-old who went to see the first film, New Hope, with his father and brother, 7 o'clock screening, and then just like with my brother afterwards, as we go back home. So that's what I feel Mandalorian really fulfills, that need side of me. Whereas Andor is just like, and Rogue One, we're like, okay, this is the adult Star Wars fan. This is the kids fan. This is like Mandalorian is not necessarily for kids, but it fulfills like that childhood, love of Star Wars in me more than Andor did.
Oh no, I mean, obviously I have the younger lads here, you might have heard at various times in the background trying not to make a noise on it, and they've happily watched The Mandalorian all the time, absolutely love it, and I'm fascinated on how they view it, like particularly Harry. He's only 6 years old, who watches it and is just like kind of, even when I was rewatching it today on my phone, like as soon as it comes on, he's immediately transfixed, kind of knows what's going on. Obviously, the Baby Yoda stuff massively helps as well.
Yeah, well, get them into Rebels. I'm telling you, JP, like once you start Rebels, even those kids are gonna love it. It's such a great show.
That's what we'll be getting on to next time, I think, for that one as well. Like, they're very much my proxy of like, okay, how does this stuff kind of work for them? And they weren't big fans of Andor, and neither should they have been, because like you say, aimed at a much more adult Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
But that takes us to the end of this week's episode. And that's all we have to say before we get out of here is bye there.
Bye there. Bye. Goodbye.